ibn Metta is somebody whose people rejected him. And the man falls down and kisses his feet and kisses his head. But the point really here, I think, is he's being reminded now. Allah sends him a reminder from his worst enemy, Al-Walid, Ibn Mughira. He sends him a reminder, you're in the tradition of the Prophet. They suffered like you did. Yunus ibn Metta, his people in Nineveh, they wouldn't listen to him. He told them a painful punishment's coming. They laughed at him. They mocked him until he actually left the city. But Allah sent him back. So now he has to go back to Mecca. So it's a very powerful event here for the Prophet ﷺ. And then the other thing that I think is important, significant here before this, is that when he was just before this, he says an extraordinary prayer. And I think this just sums up the state of our messengers so incredibly well. He says, Allahumma ilayka ashku da'fa quwwati. I complain to you my lack of strength. I have no quwwah. I mean, the children just chased him out of Ta'if, right? And slaves. And he's a noble man. He's a aristocrat from Quraysh. And this is a secondary tribe in terms of their whole Jahili structure. He says, I complain to you, ضعف قوتي وقلة حيلتي. I don't even have a ruse. There's no strategy here, right? I'm going to Thaqif and look what they did to me. So my hila is not even working. وهواني على الناس. And how insignificant I am to other people. You know, that ahunu alayhim. You know, they can do whatever they want to me. Ya arhamar rahimin. Oh, most merciful of those who show mercy. Anta rabb al-mustad'afin. You're the Lord of those who have no power. Wa anta rabbi. Idam, who are you going to? Who are you going to leave me to? Ida. إلى بعيد يتجهمني. To some distant person that will be like the fire for me, Jahannam. إلى عدوا ملكته أمري. Or to some enemy that you give him power over me. Now look, إن لم يكن بك علي غضب فلا أبالي. If you have no anger towards me, in other words, if you're not doing this out of wrath, because Allah does, He either tries you because He's angry with you, or He tries you to raise you and elevate your state. So He says, if you're doing this and there's no anger coming from you, la ubal. I have no objection. وَلَكِنْ عَافِيَتُكَ هِيَ أَوْسَعُ لِي. But to, give me afiyah, it's easier for me. This is a complaint to Allah. He's complaining to Allah, and this is something that's acceptable to do. أَعُوذُ بِنُورِ وَجْهِكَ. I seek refuge in the light of your countenance. الَّذِي أَشْرَقَتْ لَهُ الظُّلُمَاتِ. That by it, even all of the darkness becomes illuminated. Right? So even all of this terrible thing that's happening to me now, I'll see the wisdom in it, I'll see the light in it, because this is all from you and your plan. وَصَلَحَ عَلَيْهِ أَمْرُ الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ. And all of the dunya and the akhirah, this world and the next world, is taken care of. مِنْ أَن تُنزِلَ بِيَ غَضَبَكَ. I seek refuge that your wrath should descend upon me, that you should send your wrath down on me. In other words, that this should be from your wrath. أَوْ يَحَلَّ عَلَيَّ سَخَطُكَ. Or your anger descends upon me, your displeasure. لَكَ الْعُتْبَ حَتَّى تَرْضَى. You can censure, and for you is the reproach until you're content. وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِكَ. And there's no strength and no power except from you. So this is an extraordinary dua that the Prophet ﷺ says. And again, this is pure Islam. This is really, the Prophet saying, if this is what you want, as long as you're not angry with me, I don't care. But if you're upset with me, then I have to do something. But if you're not angry with me, I don't care what you do with me. Right? And this is Islam. This is what he's saying. And then this extraordinary event occurs. So you can see now there's also, he doesn't mention this, but it's an important story. The angel of wrath was sent to Allah by Allah to the Messenger of Allah and told him that if you want, that Allah will close up the valley and crush these people with these two mountains. Which is very interesting because one of the things that happens every time there's an earthquake, I don't know if you know this, but every time there's an earthquake in Los Angeles, the mountains get closer together, right? Because that's what happens when there's an earthquake is, the valley actually becomes smaller. So here he's being offered to complete. Now, obviously, here's people that really despicable treatment. The Prophet ﷺ is a mercy to all the world. So this is again an opportunity for him to show the mercy that he has. And he said that he asked Allah to bring forth from their loins those who will worship him. And today, Thaqif is a Muslim land. And many of Bani Thaqif became scholars and became people, righteous people. So the Prophet preferred to ask for compassion for them. Now, the next thing that's interesting on this journey, again, the Prophet's, his message now, he's being rejected by all these people, but on his way back, he gets a revelation and he's reciting some Quran, and there's jinn who hear this revelation. And they actually accept it and take bay'ah with the Messenger of Allah. So now he's getting the unseen world coming to him and accepting his message. And these were jinn from Nusaybin, which at that time it's a place between Syria and Turkey, which at that time was the capital of the jinn. That was their capital. Like they have a capital, like Washington, D.C. is probably the capital now. But in those days, it was Nusaybin, and they were from there. And before that, there was a place called Abqar in Yemen, in Hadramaut, which was their land. And Aisha, radiallahu anha, asked the Prophet once about khurafat. Khurafat are superstitious stories. And the Prophet ﷺ said that khurafa was an Arab man who was actually kidnapped by the jinn and taken to this place called Abqar. Now, I don't know about alien abductions and things like that, but nowadays they talk about that. Allahu alam, I really don't know. I haven't really read it. I'm not that interested in it. But, the jinn can abduct people. And they abducted this poor man, Khurafa, and took him to Abqar. And he saw the most bizarre thing. He went back and he started telling people, and they started saying how the hadith of Khurafa. This is like a Khurafa story. So it became the word for crazy stories, Khurafat. And Abqari is a genius. Now, a genius is also, the Latin word for it is from a Greek word, which is from the same Arabic word, jinn. So a genius it's the same meaning, an abqari, somebody who they believed that geniuses had a jinn on their shoulder telling them all this stuff because they were so different from other people, right? In fact, there was a famous Sufi philosopher, Ibn Sab'in. Some people say he was a heretic, but one of the scholars, I think it was Ibn Abdus Salam, one of the scholars said that he spent from the early morning until Dhuhr with him, and he said he could understand the individual words, he said, but when he put them together, he couldn't understand them. He was just so in another realm. His language was so complicated, right? Now, Imam al-Baqallani, radiallahu anhu, he used to give these long answers. He had a lot of public debates, and he used to give these long answers. They were very complicated. He was absolute genius. And the people in the debate, they'd like, and once he gave an incredibly brilliant answer that was very long, and he said, if my opponent can repeat what I just said, I'll surrender the debate to him. And his opponent said, Imam Abu Bakr, if you can repeat what you just said, I'll surrender the debate to you. So anyway, these jinn heard the revelation, and that's where Surah Al-Jinn comes, right? قُلْ أُوحِيَ إِلَيَّ أَنَّهُ اسْتَمَعَ نَفَرٌ مِّنَ الْجِنِّ فَقَالُوا إِنَّا سَمِعْنَا قُرْآنًا عَجَبًا يَهْدِي إِلَى الرُّشْدِ فَآمَنَّا بِهِ وَلَا نُشْرِكَ بِرَبِّنَا أَحَدًا. The interesting thing was nafar, which is usually less than 10. Some say it was 7 jinn that heard the messenger of Allah, and they believed in him. And also, when Surah Ar-Rahman came down, he said it to the jinn, and whenever they said, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ, because it was to the ins and the jinn, which of the favors of the Lord do you two deny, jinn and ins? And the jinn would say, we don't deny any of them. And when he recited it to the human Muslims, they didn't respond. And he said, your brothers from the jinn had a better response than you did. So, and there's also a masjid in Mecca called Masjid al-Jinn, which is where this event occurred. It's not far from the Haram Sharif. Now, when the Prophet ﷺ, obviously he can't return under the same conditions which caused him to leave for Ta'if, because he's really being abused now. And he asked Akhnas ibn Shariq for a protection, and he wouldn't give it to him. But Mut'im, again, Ibn Adi, gives him protection. And Mut'im, if you remember, was one of the people that was vehemently against the sanctions against Bani Hashim. So he agrees to him, and he goes to the Kaaba with him. And Abu Jahl, the first thing they said, are you tabi' or mujir? Are you follower or are you a protector? In other words, if you've become a follower, it's amazing jahiliyyah here. He said, if you become a Muslim, we're not interested in your protection. So are you a follower or a protector? And he said, I'm mujir, I'm a protector. And they said, then we'll honor your protection, because he wasn't a Muslim. Now, here comes a great event, which is the Isra and the Mi'raj. And I wanted to, because there's so many extraordinary things that happen in this, I wanted to just go through a few of them. There's different versions or riwayat on this. The soundest of the riwayat have been collected because they're really not told as one story. They're in different versions. And the soundest ones that have been collected are what's known as the riwayah of Ash-Shami and Al-Ghayti. And so a lot of extraordinary wisdoms come out of this event. But what happened is, it was the Prophet's habit, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, to go to the Kaaba and to go to the Hijr of Ismail. And if you remember, this was where Abdul Muttalib used to go also. And this is where he had his dream about the well of Zamzam. It's a blessed place. According to the Maliki scholars, part of the blessing is the fact that Ismail and Hajar are said to be buried there. So it has great blessing. And it's also part of the interior of the Kaaba. The Hijr of Ismail is actually part of the Hajar is here, and the Hijr, now there's a marble around it, and there's a rain spout here up on top where the water comes down. So if you're looking from Maqam Ibrahim, which is here, and the black stone is here, it's over here. When you do the tawaf, you have to go around it. You can't go inside it. And you pray nafila there. So the Prophet ﷺ was there sleeping, and Jibreel alayhi salam came to him, woke him up, he got upright, and then he came a second and a third time, took him by the arm, led him out to the gate of the masjid, and there was a white beast there. Now this, obviously, al-buraq, it's called al-buraq, is some type of beast from the unseen realm. He said it was not as big as a horse, not as small as a donkey, and between a mule and a donkey. And he had wings, and at his side, in which he moved his legs, and his every stride was as far as the eye can see. Now, if you look at the idea of as far as the eye can see, I mean, it's a very interesting idea. It's also called the buraq, which is from barq, which is like lightning, so it's like the speed of light. I mean, it's traveling incredibly fast speed. And the Prophet ﷺ is told to get on it, and in the riwayah, it's difficult. But only a Prophet rode this beast. And so what happens is he's taken initially up. Before this also, he doesn't mention this, but in a riwayah, his breast was also split, and it was washed again, as it had been washed when he was a child, as a type of internal preparation for what's going to take place. And his heart was wiped 3 times, and نَزَعَ مَا كَانَ بِهِ مِنْ أَذًى. So all of the difficulties that he had before that, all of the grief, all of these troubles that he'd had, all of that was removed from his heart in order to prepare him for going to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's washed again with the Zamzam in a vessel of gold, and filled with wisdom and iman, and everything of otherness was removed from his heart, and it was filled with forbearance, knowledge, and certainty, and Islam. And then it was after that he put a seal on the back where the seal was. It was sealed, and then he was given the buraq, and it had a saddle and a mulja, which is a bridle. And it was muqtarib, it moving, the ears were moving, and it was like, so he gets on this, and then Jibreel alayhi salam, when he sees the buraq is having a difficulty, he said, don't be, لا تستحي يا براق فوالله ما راكبك خلق أكرم على الله منه. So he said, no one has ever ridden you better than this man. This is the best that's ever ridden you. And he says that the Prophet used to ride it before that. Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib says that it was the dabba of Ibrahim that he used to ride from Syria to Mecca when he would go back and forth, when Ismail was there. So then he was told, at a certain point they came to a place where there was Nakhlan, and they descended and they prayed there, and then he said, do you know where you prayed? And he said, you prayed in Medina. So the Prophet actually descended in Medina. He doesn't know yet that this is where he's going to make hijrah to, but they prayed there as a preparation for Medina. And then they stopped again and prayed, and he said, do you know where you prayed? He said, no. He said, in Madian, at the tree where Musa alayhi salam used to pray. And then they continued on, and then they prayed in another place, and he said, do you know where you prayed? And he said, no. And he said, Bituri Sina, where Musa spoke with Allah. So he prayed there. And in a riwayah also, he saw Musa alayhi salam in his grave worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So then they went and prayed in another place. He said, do you know where we just prayed? He said, no. He said, in Bethlehem, where Isa alayhi salam, the son of Mary, was born. And then he saw a jinn with some fire, and he was told that Jibril said to him, can I teach you some words that if you say it, all of these manifestations will disappear with their fire? And the Prophet said, yes. And so he said, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ الْكَرِيمِ بِكَلِمَاتِ اللَّهِ التَّامَّاتِ الَّتِي لَا يُجَاوِزُهُنَّ بَرٌّ وَلَا فَاجِرٌ مِنْ شَرِّ مَا يَنْزِلُ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ وَمِنْ شَرِّ مَا يَعْرُجُ فِيهَا وَمِنْ شَرِّ مَا ذَرَأَ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَمِنْ شَرِّ مَا يَخْرُجُ مِنْهَا ومن فتن الليل والنهار ومن طوارق الليل والنهار إن طارق يطرق بخير يا رحمن فانكب بفيه. So when he said these things, this fire fell from the Ifrit's mouth. Ifrit is like a leader from the jinn. And then what happens is they go to, I mean there's quite a few things actually that occur, but they get to Bayt al-Maqdis. In one we actually should do this because there's some really important things here. In one riwayah, he actually sees the hellfire, and Jibril takes him there, and he sees many things on that night. One of them was that he saw people that were يزرعون في يوم ويحصدون في يوم كلما حصدوا عاد كما كان فقال يا جبريل من هذا. He saw people actually farming, and then they would harvest in the same time that they were farming. Every time they cut it, it would grow up again. And he said, who are these? And he said, هؤلاء المجاهدون في سبيل الله تعالى تضاعف لهم الحسنات ب700 ضعف ما أنفقوا من شيء فهو يخلفه. That these were people who did jihad fi sabilillah. And so that's like a metaphor for what their jihad was like. They're just getting reward constantly. And then it said, وَوَجَدَ رِيحًا طَيِّبًا قَالَ يَا جِبْرِيلُ مَا هَذِهِ الرَّائِحَةُ قَالَ هِيَ رَائِحَةُ مَاشِطَةٍ بِنْتِ فِرْعَوْنَ وَأَوْلَادِهَا. And this was the رائحة, the scent of Mashita, the daughter of Fir'aun and her children. بينما هي تمشط بنت فرعون إذ سقط المشط فقالت بسم الله تعيس فرعون فقالت ابنة فرعون أولك رب غير أبي فقالت نعم قالت فأخبر بذلك أبي قالت نعم فأخبرته فدعاها فقال أولك رب غيري قالت نعم. So this is an event that happens between Fir'aun and saying when she heard him call on Allah, and she said, do you have a Lord other than Fir'aun? And she said, yes. And she said, will you say it to them? And she said, yes. And so she did. And so Fir'aun killed them, right? So that was like a sign of a shaheed. And then he saw also the four that spoke in the Mahad when they were children, Shahidu Yusuf, Sahibu Jurayj and Isa ibn Maryam. And ثم أتى على قوم ترضخ رؤوسهم كلما رضخت عادت كما كانت ولا يفتر عنهم من ذلك شيء. قال يا جبريل من هؤلاء؟ قال هؤلاء الذين تتعاقد رؤوسهم عن صراط المكتوبة. He saw people whose heads were being smashed, and every time they got smashed, they were brought back together, and then they were smashed again. And he said, who are these people, Ya Jibril? And he said, those are people who never bothered to get up for prayer, for the obligatory prayers. ثم أتى على قوم على أقبالهم رقاع وعلى أدبارهم رقاع يسرحون كما تسرح الإبل والغنم ويأكلون الضريع والزقوم ورضف جهنم وحجارتها. قال من هؤلاء؟ جبريل قال هؤلاء الذين لا يودون صدقات أموالهم وما ظلمهم الله شيئا. And then he saw another people who were eating, they had rags on their back and rags on their front, and they were eating like camels and sheep eat. And they were eating like zaqqum, which is this horrible thorny tree in Jahannam. And they were eating fire, and there were stones of fire. And he says, who are these, Jibril? And Jibril says, those are the ones who never used to pay the zakat of their wealth. And Allah did not oppress them one iota. And then he came to a people, between their hands was like a raw meat that was a meat that was cooked in pots. and then another one was raw and it was foul. And instead of eating the cooked one that was good, they would eat the foul one. And Jibreel alayhi salam, he asked Jibreel, who are these? And he said, this is a man from your ummah who had a wife who was halal and pure, and he would go to a foul woman and sleep with her until the morning, or a woman who did the same. So instead of taking the halal, they went to the haram for their pleasure. And then he came also to a wood on the road, and it did not pass by any robe except that it tore it apart. And he said, what is this? And he said, these are like people who, from your ummah, who will rob others. And then he saw a man who was swimming in a river of blood, and he was being smashed with stones. And he said, who are these people? And he said, these are people who eat usury, consume usury. They swim in rivers of blood. Every time they get to the shore, they get smashed by shayateen, and they have to go back into the river of blood. And it's important also the idea of a river of blood being here for people of usury, because part of the usurious system is it always leads to war. So it's just like so many people have died because of usury. And again, it's beginning to happen again. And then also, there was another, he came upon a man who was gathering wood and he couldn't carry it. And every time he would try, it would increase. And he said, who's this, Jibreel? And he said, this is a man from your ummah that used to have trusts from people, and he would not, he was not able to fulfill them, but he wanted to. And then he came to a people whose tongues and lips were being cut off with scissors of iron. And every time they got cut off, they would be added. And then he said, who are these, Jibreel? And he said, these are the khutaba al-fitna. They're the khutaba of fitna, of dissension. The khutaba who used to give khutbah saying what they didn't do. And I'll just say something really interesting. One of the things that we notice in the Muslim world is when you, in many, many places where you go into the masjid for a khutbah, it's almost like everybody's asleep, right? And the khutbah is really to wake people up. And what happens is when you have people who are insincere, who are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, or they're just simply working for governments and reading khutbahs that they've been given by the government, it is a fitna for the people, because the whole point of Islam is to wake people up, and this ends up putting them to sleep and really making them pessimistic about the deen. They see it as it's just ritual that's completely, the meaning of it has been removed, and so it's a real tragedy. And then he passed by a people who had nails like copper, and they were scratching their faces and their breast with them. And he said, who are these, Jibreel? And he says, these are the ones who were backbiting about people and constantly talking about the good names of others. And then he came upon a small hole, and from it there was a vast cave. And the cave wanted to return from where it came, but it was unable. And he said, what is this, Jibreel? And he said, this is the man from your ummah who speaks some great thing and then some enormity. He speaks an enormity and then he regrets it.